I should have trusted my gut when I first stepped into St. Ives Memorial Hospital. The air smelled like old paper and antiseptic. Fine, I guess. But there was something else underneath it. Something sour. Almost like spoiled milk. But I ignored it. I needed the job. It was my first week as an overnight nurse. The recruiter said they were short-staffed, that I'd be filling in until a permanent staff could be found. The pay was good, too good if I'm being honest, and they offered accommodations just across the street. It all sounded perfect. I met the head nurse, Ms. Delara, on my first night. She looked about 70, her skin translucent in the flickering fluorescent light. Her eyes were too sharp, like they'd been carved from glass. She handed me a binder the moment I walked in. "This is the rulebook," she said. "You'll need to memorize every page." I laughed awkwardly. "You mean policies? Like standard protocol?" She didn't smile. "No, I mean the rules. The real ones." I flipped through it and felt a chill crawl up my spine. The rules weren't what I expected. Here are a few I remember clearly. Never enter Ward 9. If the intercom crackles at 3:15 a.m., do not respond. Do not acknowledge the voice. Patients in room 304 are always sedated. If they are awake, alert Ms. Delara immediately and leave the floor. Do not feed the man in the basement, no matter what he says. You may hear someone crying from inside the walls. Ignore it. There were dozens more. I thought it was some kind of hazing. Nurses playing games with the newbie. Still, the way Ms. Delara stared at me while I read. It wasn't a joke. Not to her. That first night was quiet. I stayed on the 3rd floor, mostly checking vitals and refilling IVs. I told myself the rules were part of some archaic tradition. Maybe superstition. Old buildings have their quirks. It wasn't until my 3rd night that I broke the first rule. It was just after 3 a.m. I was restocking supplies in the hallway when I heard footsteps. Not the shuffling kind you expect from patients. These were sharp, heavy, deliberate. I turned and saw a man in a hospital gown walking down the hall, away from the restricted area. "Sir," I called out. "You're not supposed to be here." He didn't answer. He just kept walking, slow and steady, toward Ward 9. I should have let him go. I know that now, but I followed him. The entrance to Ward 9 was chained shut, padlocked, with a large red sign. Restricted. No entry. I saw the man walk straight through the door like it wasn't even there. The chains didn't rattle. The padlock didn't click. He just vanished through it. I stood there frozen, hand halfway to the doorknob. Then the intercom crackled. "Don't follow him." It was a man's voice, deep and strained. I backed away instinctively. I didn't sleep that day. The next night, the head nurse was waiting for me by the elevator. "You saw him, didn't you?" she asked. I didn't answer. "You followed him. Most new ones do." She reached into her pocket and handed me a small red thread tied into a loop. "Wear this around your neck," she said. "He won't follow you back if you wear it. But only if you wear it every night." I started to ask who he was, but she shook her head. "You don't want to know." On my 5th night, the intercom went off again, 3:15 a.m. Exactly. This time it was a child's voice. "Nurse? I'm scared. Please, can you come help me? I'm in the walls." I bit down on my tongue so hard I tasted blood. It didn't stop. "Please? I don't like the dark. He's here. He's watching me." Then silence. I didn't respond. I sat in the supply closet until the sun came up. That morning, I noticed a handprint on the inside of the closet door. Small, like a child's, and blood smeared around it. I tried to quit that day. Went to HR and handed in my badge. "You signed a contract," the man at the desk said, not looking up. "Minimum term is 30 days. If you break it, you forfeit your pay and your license gets flagged." I don't remember signing any contract. That night, I heard someone knocking from inside the medicine cabinet. Rhythmic, soft, like fingernails. I didn't open it. That was last night. Tonight, it's 2:57 a.m. I'm writing this in the nurse's station because I'm afraid to move. I saw something in the mirror earlier. Something that looked like me, but it wasn't me. It was smiling. I wasn't. The intercom just clicked on again. But this time it's silent. I know the voice will come soon. And I know I won't like what it says. The intercom was still on. That low hum, the kind that sits in the bones of the walls, vibrated softly through the nurse's station. I stared at it like it might speak first, like if I waited long enough, it would say something I could understand. But it didn't. It just stayed on. I reached toward it, my hand trembling more than I'd like to admit, and stopped inches away from the button. Then the whisper came. You opened the door. I yanked my hand back like I'd touched something hot. The voice wasn't a child's this time. It wasn't a man's either. It was like both, or neither. It scraped the back of my mind, like a rusty nail dragged across a chalkboard made of thought. I stumbled away from the station, bumping into a crash cart hard enough to knock over a blood pressure cuff. The clang echoed too loud in the empty hallway. Silence followed. But I knew better than to trust it now. I ran. Not in the way you picture it. Not screaming down a corridor like a final girl in a horror flick. I ran the way you do in a nightmare, where your limbs feel like wet sandbags and every hallway seems longer than it should be. Like the hospital was stretching itself while I moved through it. I didn't even know where I was going. I just wanted to get away from the intercom. I ended up on the 4th floor where the long-term comatose patients are kept. It's always quiet there, even during the day. At night, it's like a mausoleum with IVs. But something was off. The lights were flickering in a pattern. Not random, deliberate. Left to right, pause, then right to left. I stood at the stairwell door and watched it loop twice before I realized. The flickers were leading me, pointing me toward the end of the hallway, to room 404. There is no room 404, or at least there wasn't. I checked the floor plan 100 times. We skipped that number. Superstition or something else, I never asked. But now, right where there should have been a blank stretch of wall, there was a door. Plain, wooden, unmarked, like it had always been there. And worst of all, it was open. I should have turned back. I should have run straight to Ms. Delara and begged her to sedate me until sunrise. But I didn't. Something about the open door pulled at me. Not curiosity. Not fear. Something worse. I stepped inside. It wasn't a hospital room. It was a hallway. Much narrower than the hospital corridors and impossibly long. The walls were covered in peeling floral wallpaper, the kind you'd find in a grandmother's house, except everything was damp, like it had been underwater. And there were mirrors on both sides. Hundreds of them, all cracked or fogged, but just clear enough for me to see. They didn't reflect me. They showed other things. In one, I saw myself standing at the nurse's station, smiling at a patient that had no face. In another, I was lying in a hospital bed, tubes down my throat, eyes open but not blinking. And in the worst one, I was sitting on the floor, sobbing, covered in blood, holding a child's hand that wasn't attached to a body. Couldn't breathe. I turned back. The door was gone. Just endless hallway, mirrors on both sides, some of them still showing me, others now just black. Not empty, black, like there was something on the other side, watching. I started walking. I don't know for how long. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. There were no clocks and the air never changed. The damp stuck to my skin. My shoes squelched with every step. Eventually, the hallway ended in another door. Room 304. That made my stomach drop. I knew 304. It was one of the rules. Patients in room 304 are always sedated. If they are awake, alert Ms. Delara immediately and leave the floor. Except, there was no one to alert now, and I was already on the wrong side of the hospital. I pushed the door open. The lights buzzed overhead, those flickering fluorescents that hospitals insist on using no matter how many times they die. The room was lit like an interrogation cell. A single bed, restraints on all four sides, a heart monitor that didn't beep. And the patient, he was awake. He was sitting up, in fact, hands folded neatly in his lap. Eyes completely white, no iris, no pupil. His skin looked brittle like paper left in the sun. And he was smiling. "Nurse," he said. His voice was calm, gentle even, the kind you'd want to hear in a crisis. But every instinct in my body told me to run. I'm not supposed to be here, I whispered. No, he said. But you are. And now you see. See what? The layers. He raised one hand, and every monitor in the room flatlined. Not with a beep, with a scream. A long, mechanical shriek that rattled the glass of the windows and made my teeth hurt. The walls began to bleed. I turned and ran. No shame, no hesitation. I ran back the way I came, through the hallway of mirrors, not stopping even when I felt the air behind me shift, like something was close, breathing on my neck, humming. I burst back onto the 4th floor. I don't know how the door came back. I don't care. I slammed it shut behind me, and this time there was no doorknob, just solid white wall. Room 404 was gone. I spent the rest of the night in the staff restroom, locked in a stall, clutching that red thread Ms. Delara gave me. I kept thinking about the patient in 304. How calm he was, how expectant, like he was waiting for me. I didn't tell anyone what happened. What could I say? When I reported for shift this evening, there was a note taped to my locker. It was written in perfect cursive on thick parchment. Welcome to the in-between. You opened the door. You belong to the hospital now. I checked the schedule. I'm no longer assigned to any floor. My new title? Night Supervisor, Ward 9. I stared at the schedule until my eyes blurred. Night Supervisor, Ward 9. It didn't make sense. Ward 9 wasn't just restricted, it didn't exist. At least not in the blueprints I was shown during onboarding. It was a ghost ward. A rumor. A hallway with no doors that led nowhere. Now my name was attached to it. I didn't go to Ms. Delara. She already knew. She always knows. When the clock struck 11 p.m., I found my body moving on its own. Not entirely, but enough that I didn't feel in control. My steps felt chosen for me. My fingers gripped the red thread like it was the only real thing left. I walked past the other nurses, none of whom looked me in the eye. One of them, Claire, I think, was crying in the break room, her back turned to the wall. Her shoulders moved like she was sobbing hard, but no sound came out. I paused for a moment, then kept walking. They all knew better than to speak to the night supervisor. I took the elevator down, but the basement level didn't exist on the control panel anymore. It had been replaced. Ward 9. The elevator doors shut. The descent was slow. Too slow. The light above the door didn't blink between floors. It just dimmed, like something thick was pressing down on the cab. The air grew colder. The fluorescent buzz vanished. All that remained was a distant, low moaning, like wind caught in steel pipes. When the doors opened, I saw it. The hallway stretched ahead like the spine of something dead. The lights flickered above, and shadows writhed along the edges of the walls. Not walking or crawling, but shifting, like they were breathing with me. Cold, rhythmic exhale. I clutched the red thread. Then I stepped in. The smell hit me first. Not rot, not mildew, those I could handle. This was worse. It smelled like electricity. Burnt hair, ozone and copper. Coated the back of my tongue like old blood. The hallway was lined with doors. No numbers, just thick wooden panels, each stained differently. Some dark with water damage, some blackened around the edges like they'd been in a fire, and each one had a small window covered with wire mesh. I approached the first door. Something moved inside. I leaned closer. The glass was fogged from within, but I could see fingers pressed flat against it. Long, too long, and twitching slightly. The thing behind the glass didn't breathe like a person. It pulsed like a sack of insects trying to stay in sync. I moved on. At the third door, I heard humming. Soft, sweet, a lullaby. I knew the song. My mother used to sing it when I was sick. I should have run. I wanted to run. Instead, I opened the door. Inside was a woman in a hospital gown, sitting on the edge of a rusted bed. Her hair was thin and gray, her back straight as a rod. Her hands rested in her lap, and her eyes were sewn shut with thick black thread. But she was humming. Her lips never moved. When she turned her head toward me, I felt it, like ice water dumped down my spine. "Nurse," she said, though her mouth never opened. "You're early." I'm not supposed to be here," I said. I didn't. This isn't my. She raised a hand. The humming stopped. The room began to close in. Not physically, but emotionally. Like I was being remembered by the walls. Like I was something that had escaped and was now being dragged back. You're late, she said again, louder this time. I backed out of the room and slammed the door. I kept moving. Halfway down the hallway, I saw the window. A long rectangular pane at the very end, looking out into darkness. But something stood on the other side. Not a person, too tall, too wide, but vaguely human-shaped. It tapped the glass with one long finger. Once, twice. Then the intercom crackled overhead. You're almost ready, it said. Then footsteps. Behind me. I turned. All the doors were opening. Slowly, silently, one by one, the handles turned and opened inward. Darkness spilled out from inside each room, thicker than night. And the things inside started to step into the hallway. Some were limping. Some were crawling. Some floated just above the floor like their bodies had forgotten gravity. But all of them were moving toward me. I ran. The elevator wasn't there anymore. The hallway behind me stretched further, growing as I ran. The lights flickered so violently I thought they might burst. Then I saw her, Ms. Delara, standing perfectly still beneath a red emergency light. Her uniform was spotless, her hands folded over her waist. She nodded once and pointed toward a side corridor I hadn't noticed before. I turned and darted down it, lungs burning. That's when I arrived back at the third floor. Just like that, like none of it happened. Except when I looked down at my hands, they were covered in blood. My name tag had changed. RN M. Rivera, Ward 9 staff, permanent. I threw up in the supply closet. I don't even remember deciding to go in there. It was like instinct, like I'd done it before. The red thread around my neck was frayed, like it had been yanked, like something had tried to pull it off. I didn't finish the shift. I left at sunrise, went home, and locked every door and window in my apartment. I haven't gone back to work in 3 days. But last night, someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. But this morning, taped to the outside, was a new schedule. Night shift Ward 9. Required. Attendance is not optional. And beneath that, in handwriting I didn't recognize, if you don't come back, we'll send someone to get you. Probably the child in the walls. He misses you. I didn't sleep after finding the note. I sat on the floor of my kitchen with the lights on and a butcher knife in my lap. Every creak of the building made me flinch. My apartment used to feel safe. A small second-floor studio with yellow curtains and chipped tile. Now it feels like a holding cell. A place where the walls breathe just a little too loud. I didn't want to go back. But I knew the hospital would make good on its threat. The child in the walls. I thought it was just a rule. Just a story to keep new nurses from poking into things. But now I wasn't so sure. Around 3 a.m., I heard scratching. Not from the front door. Not from a window. From inside the wall. Near my bed. It was slow and deliberate. 1, 2, 3 scratches. A pause. Then again. And underneath it, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. A whisper. Nurse. I packed a bag and left before the sun came up. I didn't go to the hospital right away. I took the long route, walked 5 blocks in the wrong direction, sat at a diner for an hour pretending to drink coffee. The waitress had no face. Not in a metaphorical sense, she literally had no face. Just smooth skin where her eyes and mouth should be. No one else seemed to notice. I left the money on the table and ran. By the time I reached St. Ives, the sun was fully up, but the building was still cloaked in shadow. Like it hadn't been touched by daylight in years. As soon as I stepped into the lobby, the fluorescent lights above buzzed to life. The receptionist looked up, smiled, and handed me a new badge without saying a word. RN M. Rivera. Ward 9 night assignment, permanent. The red thread I wore had unraveled by then. Nothing but loose fibers hanging from my collar. Ms. Delara was waiting by the elevator. You missed a shift, she said. No anger, no judgment. Just a fact. I opened my mouth to explain. Something, anything. But she held up her hand. They don't like being ignored. Who are they? I asked. She didn't answer, just pressed the elevator button. This time, when the doors opened, I saw someone already inside. It was me, or at least it looked like me, standing in the corner of the elevator wearing the same scrubs, same shoes, same badge. But her smile was too wide, her eyes too still. She tilted her head in a jerky, unnatural twitch and raised one hand in a little wave. I froze. "She'll ride with you tonight," Ms. Delara said softly. "Don't let her speak. And whatever you do, don't let her touch you." The doors began to close. I didn't move. Couldn't. Ms. Delara leaned in and whispered, "She's a placeholder. For when you're no longer needed." And then I was in the elevator. Alone. Or so I told myself. We descended in silence. I didn't look at her. I watched the floor numbers slide past, only they weren't numbers anymore. They were symbols. The kind you see carved into trees, or painted on old barn doors in places that don't appear on maps. The doors opened with a sigh. Ward 9. Tonight it was different. Warmer. The hallway was lined with lights that flickered like candles, though I knew they weren't real flame. The shadows here moved even when nothing else did. The air was thicker, more humid, like a mouth had breathed on the walls too long. And there was music playing. Somewhere deep in the ward, a piano echoed. Soft, off-key. I followed it. The me that wasn't me followed behind. I never turned to check, but I felt her, always just a few feet behind, breathing in sync with me, smiling maybe. I didn't dare turn around. The hallway twisted tonight. I knew because I passed a door labeled 404 again. Then another. Then a third, even though I was sure I hadn't circled back. The hospital didn't obey geometry here. Time didn't work the same either. I could feel the clock on my wrist slowing. I reached the source of the piano, a room I had never seen. Inside was a man in a hospital gown, hunched over the keys. His fingers were long and skeletal, the nails curling under like hooks. He never looked up. "Are you the nurse?" he asked. I didn't respond. He pressed a single key. It let out a soft, mournful note. "You missed your calling," he said. "You were never meant to be a healer." "Then what am I supposed to be?" His hands froze. "You're the keeper." The room grew darker. He stood slowly, and I saw that his eyes had been gouged out. Two dark holes stared in my direction. He smiled, and then he touched the mirror. I didn't even notice the mirror on the wall before, but now it shimmered like the surface of water. The man placed both hands against it, and something inside moved. It was me, trapped, pounding from the other side, screaming. The version of me behind the mirror had blood running down her face and fingers shredded to the bone. Her mouth moved fast, over and over. "Don't trust her. Don't trust her. Don't trust her." I turned around, and she was there. The copy, the placeholder. Her hands were reaching for me, fingers twitching like spider legs. Her smile peeled open wider than it should have been. She lunged. I did the only thing I could. I grabbed the red thread, what little was left, and shoved it in her mouth. She let out a shriek that shattered the mirror. Glass rained down. When I opened my eyes, the hallway was gone. I was back at the nurse's station. Lights flickering. Clock. 3:16 a.m. The intercom crackled. Then a voice I hadn't heard before. A child's voice. "I found your apartment key." My blood turned to ice. "How did you?" The line cut off. I looked down. My ID badge was gone. In its place was a note. "She's out now. You took her place. Welcome home, Nurse Rivera." The note in place of my ID badge felt heavier than it should have. Like it had absorbed something, weight, fear, maybe even time itself. "She's out now. You took her place. Welcome home, Nurse Rivera." I should have run. But the thing was, there was nowhere to go. The hospital was the world now. Everything else. My apartment, the streets, the sky. It all felt like a memory someone had erased halfway through. I couldn't even remember what my mother's voice sounded like anymore. I stood at the nurse's station on Ward 9, frozen, until the lights above dimmed again. The intercom gave a soft pop, then hissed with static. Code Black. The words echoed through every floor. I didn't know what Code Black meant, but I knew it wasn't good. We had codes for everything. Blue for medical emergency, red for fire, yellow for missing patient. But black? Black meant something final. The hallway lights shut off, one by one. Each section of the corridor was swallowed in pitch. I could hear it coming, the dark. Not just absence of light, but a force, something moving through the space. Like it had teeth. I backed away from the station. My reflection, the other me, was gone. I had taken her place, apparently. I was the placeholder now. The thought crawled under my skin like a beetle. Behind me, the elevator dinged. I turned, slowly. The doors were wide open. Inside was that impossible thing I saw before, tall, too wide for the frame, its arms dragging on the floor. Its head scraped the ceiling. I stepped out. I ran. The hallway stretched like taffy under my feet, each step harder than the last, like gravity was thickening. I passed rooms I didn't recognize. Some were empty. Some were not. I didn't look inside. I kept running until the hallway abruptly ended in a wall of pulsing, living flesh. Veins throbbed beneath semi-translucent skin. I could see faces pushing out of it, nurses, patients, maybe even me. Some screamed. Some laughed. A hand reached out of the wall and tried to grab me. I turned and bolted into a stairwell I hadn't noticed before. The air was colder here. The steps were slick with something dark, something that smelled of rust and medicine. I climbed upward, not knowing where it led. I stopped on the 4th floor. It was normal, light steady, air still, like the hospital I first started in. I crept through the hallway. Then I saw Claire, the nurse who'd been crying in the break room my first week. She was sitting on the floor, knees to chest, rocking slowly. "Claire," I whispered. She looked up. Her eyes were completely gone, just raw, wet sockets. But somehow she still saw me. "They never let you go," she whispered. "Even if you leave, you don't really leave. You'll see them in mirrors, in ceilings, in your own teeth when you open your mouth to scream." "Claire, what is Code Black?" She opened her mouth, but it wasn't her voice that came out. It was mine. "It's the final shift." Claire stood, her face stretched like melted wax. Then she opened her mouth wider than it should have gone, and coughed up my name tag, clattered to the floor at my feet. I picked it up with shaking hands. M. Rivera, Code Black clearance. The hallway changed. Suddenly, I was standing outside the hospital again. Bright sunlight, cars passing, people walking, real life. I stumbled forward, blinking in disbelief. A woman walking her dog smiled at me. I smelled warm coffee and city air. I almost fell to my knees. But then I looked down. The sidewalk beneath my feet wasn't concrete. Not entirely. It moved, subtle like breath, like skin. I looked up at the hospital behind me. Only it wasn't there. St. Ives was gone. In its place was an empty lot surrounded by a rusting chain-link fence. A crooked wooden sign stood at the center. Closed since 1971. Condemned, do not enter. I stumbled back, heart pounding. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification. New shift added. Ward 9, final round. And then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Hello." Silence. Then a small child's voice whispering. "You left the door open." Behind me, my apartment door creaked. I turned slowly. I was inside again. In my apartment. But everything was wrong. My furniture was rearranged. The walls pulsed faintly. The lights flickered in a rhythm I recognized from Ward 9. There were footsteps in my kitchen. I wasn't alone. I grabbed the knife I had left on the counter days ago and crept forward. The fridge door swung open on its own. The hum of the compressor deepened into a growl. Then, a face appeared on the white plastic surface. Mine. I grinned. "You made it out. But you brought us with you." The kitchen window shattered. The lights blew. The walls screamed. And I realized, finally, what they meant. You don't leave Ward 9. You just bring it home.